I'm revealing your secret today, at the meeting with the partners. Her voice was calm, but her words struck me like lightning. Everything froze. I barely managed to grab the phone, almost cracking the screen. Each second stretched into eternity. What did you say? I barely managed to get the words out. I can't hide it anymore. You know what I'm talking about, she continued, not giving me a chance to reply. Your lies about the business, your manipulation of the numbers, all those schemes you've kept hidden. It's time, Dad. The world needs to know who you really are. I felt a cold wave crash over me from head to toe. I knew exactly what she was referring to. The secret I had been hiding for decades was finally coming back to haunt me. Memories rushed through my mind, my early days in business, when I used false data to get the loans and investments I needed. A mistake I corrected back then, but never told my family about. It was my dark side, and now, because of my daughter, it was about to be my downfall. You can't do this. My voice trembled, but ENN wasn't listening. I will, Dad. It's time. I can't keep turning a blind eye to your past. The phone made a short sound as she hung up. I sat still, unable to move, not knowing what to do next. I knew that if she followed through, I would lose everything. Everything I had worked for, my entire life, it was all about to come crashing down in an instant. I always believed that in life, you can't get anywhere without taking risks. That was my principle from the very beginning. When I first started, things weren't easy. I had no connections, no significant funds, and no support. I built my business from the ground up, just like any other newcomer, and every step was a struggle. But I wasn't ready to give up. Back then, business was like a jungle, harsh competition, a shortage of money, and investors who weren't ready to take risks. I found myself at a crossroads, unsure of how to secure the necessary funds to even get the project off the ground. It was terrifying. But I decided to take a chance, even if it meant bending the rules. I realized that without doing this, it simply wouldn't work. When I tried to get funding for my startup, I found myself unable to present a full, accurate picture to convince investors. I didn't have all the necessary figures, and I knew that if I showed them the real state of affairs, they would refuse. So, I decided to bend the truth. I inflated some of the numbers to make the prospects seem more appealing. At that moment, it felt like the most logical thing to do. I was confident that this was temporary, that once the company gained traction, everything would fall into place, and I would fix my mistake. But when I received the needed funding, and the project started moving forward, I realized that at some point I would have to put everything right. I knew that if anyone ever found out what I had done, it would not only destroy my business but also my reputation. Everything I had worked for could come crashing down. And I also knew that if my family found out, my children would be disappointed in me. I couldn't let that happen. And I fixed it all. The business began to stabilize, the debts were paid off, the data was corrected, and the project took off. We started making profits, and I finally felt like I could breathe again. But hiding this part of my story was tough. I knew that, despite fixing everything, this stain on my reputation would always linger. I couldn't let my children find out what I had done when I started. They wouldn't understand. They wouldn't forgive me. Time passed, and the business became successful. But I continued living with this secret. I had this image in their eyes as an honest man who had created everything on his own. I was proud of overcoming all the obstacles. But I never confessed to them what I had done at the start. To them, I was always an example, but for me, that mistake was a burden I carried forward, not letting anyone know the truth. Now, when I think about it, I realize I took a risk. I went for it because I was sure I wouldn't lose anything. But if it had gone wrong back then, there would have been nothing, no company, no reputation, no family. At that moment, I didn't think I would end up in this place, with this burden. And now, when this secret has resurfaced, I know I can't hide it anymore. I had prepared for this meeting for weeks. It was supposed to be a turning point, the discussion about expanding the company, moving into new markets, taking the business to the next level. My mind was focused, my notes were ready, and I was confident it would go smoothly. The partners were on board, and I had my team ready to back me up. But nothing could have prepared me for what my daughter, Yen, was about to do. As we gathered around the table, I could feel the tension in the room. Everyone was waiting for me to speak, but it was Yen who took the floor. She stood up, and without any hesitation, said something that made my blood run cold. In the past, my father made a financial mistake. When the business was just starting, he hid the true financial condition of the company. He used false financial reports and illegal schemes to secure funds. I froze. I could feel my throat close up as her words echoed in my head. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My daughter, the person I trusted most, was exposing the very secret I had buried for so many years. The room went silent as the partners looked from me to her, confusion and disbelief crossing their faces. I tried to keep my composure, but my mind was racing. How had she found out? Why was she doing this? I had worked so hard to fix everything, to bury the past and move forward. She had no idea how much this could destroy. I never wanted anyone to know. But there was no turning back now. Yen wasn't stopping. She kept going, her voice steady but cold, making sure everyone in the room understood the gravity of the situation. If it weren't for me and my husband, we could have lost everything. The business, the reputation, it could all have come crashing down. But we found out about the manipulations and stepped in to fix it. The words hit me harder than I ever imagined they would. I could feel my pulse in my ears. My hands tightened around the edge of the table as I tried to process what she was saying. She was using my past mistake against me. She wasn't just telling them about the issue, she was making it seem like she was the savior, the one who stepped in to fix my mess. I couldn't believe she was doing this. She was taking control, and there was nothing I could do. Because of this deception, she continued, I should now take control of the company. If I don't, the family's reputation will be ruined. My chest tightened. She was essentially telling them that I couldn't be trusted anymore, that my past mistake meant I was no longer fit to lead. She was positioning herself to take everything I had worked for. The partners exchanged glances, some of them looking to me, waiting for an explanation, but I couldn't speak. I had no defense. It felt like the walls were closing in around me. My hands were clammy, my throat dry. I wanted to shout, to explain how I had fixed everything, how I had paid back the debts, how the company had grown since then. But it was too late for that. Yen had already spoken, and in doing so, she had taken control. She had just used my past mistake, something I had hoped would never come to light, to manipulate her way into the position she wanted. I sat there, frozen, as the realization sank in, if she went through with this, I would lose everything. The company, my legacy, my place in the family. She was about to take it all from me. And there was nothing I could do to stop her. I sat there, stunned, as the words my daughter had spoken echoed in my head. The room around me seemed to blur. My world, the world I had worked so hard to build, was unraveling before my very eyes. The betrayal from Yen stung deeper than I ever imagined it could. She wasn't just revealing a mistake I made decades ago, she was using it to take everything from me. The business, my reputation, and worst of all, my dignity. She had done what I thought was impossible, she had crossed the line. But I wasn't going to sit back and let her destroy everything I had worked for. As the meeting ended, I felt the weight of her words crushing me. I could hardly think straight. I needed a plan, I needed a way to fight back. I had to find something, anything, to turn the tide. I couldn't let her manipulate the truth, turn my past into her stepping stone. This wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about something far more important, my honor, my legacy. I called my old friend, Marion Lynch, the only person I could trust in a moment like this. Marion had been my lawyer for years, someone who had seen me through both the best and worst of times. I needed his advice, and I needed it fast. The moment he picked up the phone, I could hear the concern in his voice. He knew something was wrong, and he was ready to help. I explained everything to him, what had happened at the meeting, what ENN had said, and the consequences of her actions. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could feel Marion's thoughts racing as he processed everything. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but serious. "Jonathan, you've been through a lot. But if ENN is trying to destroy you, she's making a grave mistake. We can't let her get away with this." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. He was right. I had been too passive for too long. My whole life, I had taken responsibility for everything, my failures, my mistakes. But now, she was using my own past against me, and I wasn't going to let her. It was time to strike back. We discussed the best way forward. Marion suggested digging into In's finances, seeing if there was any evidence that could back up my suspicions. He knew I had always suspected that she was hiding something, using her position to manipulate the business for her benefit. But I had never imagined how far she might have gone. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed up, going over everything in my mind. It was clear now that ENN hadn't just manipulated facts about my past, she had been doing it for years. She had been using my name, my reputation, to advance her own interests. I had to find proof, something irrefutable. And it wasn't just about the money or the business anymore. It was about showing everyone who she really was. The next day, I went to Marion's office. We spent hours going over documents, piecing together the fragments of information. Then we found it. A set of financial records that seemed innocent enough at first, but on closer inspection, revealed a different story. ENN had been involved in illegal deals with some of her business partners, manipulating contracts, hiding profits, and avoiding taxes. But that wasn't the worst part. She had used my name to secure illegal benefits in various legal schemes. It was all there in black and white. I felt a wave of anger rush over me as I realized the full extent of her deception. I had the proof now. I could use it to take control of the situation, to show her and everyone else that the truth was on my side. I wasn't going to sit back and let her take everything from me. I would expose her for what she truly was. The thought of using these documents against her made my blood run cold, but I knew I had no choice. She had made this personal. And if she wanted to destroy me, I would make sure she couldn't walk away unscathed. I didn't know what the next step would be yet, but I knew one thing for sure: this battle was far from over. I wasn't going to lose everything without a fight. I would make sure ENN knew that crossing me was a mistake she would regret. The day of the next meeting came faster than I expected. I had prepared for it, but not for what would happen next. When I walked into the conference room, the weight of the situation felt unbearable. I had been holding on to this secret for far too long, but now the time had come to take action. My daughter, ENN, had made her move, and I was ready to make mine. I could feel the tension building in the room as my partners settled into their seats, looking at me expectantly. I stood at the front of the table, my heart pounding. In's words from the last meeting still rang in my ears. She had crossed a line that I never thought she would, and I wasn't going to let her use my past to destroy everything I had worked for. I cleared my throat, the room quieting as everyone's attention turned to me. I had no plan to ease into the conversation. I wasn't going to give her a chance to twist the truth again. It was time to speak, to reveal everything. "Before we continue," I began, my voice steady but firm, "there's something you need to know. My daughter, ENN, has been using my past mistakes as leverage to manipulate this situation. But she has her own secrets, and it's time they come to light." The room went silent, all eyes now fixed on me, waiting to see what I would say next. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "What she didn't tell you," I continued, "is that for years she has been involved in illegal deals with some of her business partners. She has been hiding profits, evading taxes, and manipulating her role in the company for personal gain. She even used my name to secure illegal benefits and legal schemes." I paused for a moment, letting the weight of my words sink in. I could see the shock on the faces around the table, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But at the same time, I felt a moral heaviness. This wasn't easy. Exposing my own daughter was something I never imagined I would have to do, but I had no choice. She had given me no choice. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the documents, the evidence that would prove everything. I laid them out on the table, one by one. The partners leaned in, examining the pages as I spoke. These are the financial records. Proof of the manipulation, the illegal deals, and the tax evasion. All of it. Ian was sitting across from me, her face turning pale as she realized what was happening. Her eyes darted between me and the partners. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The control she had been so sure of was slipping through her fingers. The partners, who had once supported her, now began to exchange uncomfortable glances. I could see the doubt creeping into their minds. People who had once trusted her were now questioning everything. It didn't take long before one of them stood up. "We cannot continue working with someone involved in these activities," he said, his voice stern. The others murmured in agreement, and I could see Ian's reputation shattering before my eyes. I felt a bitter satisfaction in that moment. She had played the game, manipulated her way into power, but she had underestimated me. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I had built, and I wasn't going to let her use my past mistakes to her advantage anymore. As the room fell into chaos, I stood tall, despite the weight of the situation. Ian's face was now flushed with anger and humiliation. I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized the consequences of her actions. The control she once had was slipping away, and I wasn't going to stop until I had exposed her for who she truly was. "This company, this family, will only survive if we are honest with each other," I said, my voice firm. "I will no longer allow anyone to use me, my name, or my past for their personal gain." I turned to face Ian, my gaze hardening. "You have made your move, but this ends now." The room fell into an uneasy silence as the partners began to leave one by one, their trust in her shattered. Ian sat there, staring at me, her face a mixture of rage and disbelief. I knew this wouldn't be easy. It never was. But it had to be done. And I had no intention of letting her win. I thought that once I exposed the truth, once the lies were brought to light, everything would finally be set right. But nothing could have prepared me for the fallout that followed. The family quickly divided into two camps. On one side were those who sided with me, who understood that I had to take a stand. On the other side was Ian, my own daughter. At first, she had been so sure of her victory, so certain that she could control the narrative and manipulate everyone around her. But now, as the reality of her actions set in, she was alone. Completely alone. Her business partners, the ones she had relied on, began distancing themselves from her. Some were quietly stepping back, while others made it clear they wanted nothing more to do with her. I watched her try to salvage the situation, but it was futile. She tried to justify herself, tried to twist the story, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong. She accused me of destroying her life, of ruining everything she had worked for. She was angry, furious even, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She knew deep down that she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And then there was Harry, her husband. At first, he supported her, but even he couldn't ignore the truth. I saw it in his eyes, the doubt, the disbelief. He was stuck between his loyalty to her and the realization that what she had done was irreversible. He tried to comfort her, tried to hold everything together, but even he knew the damage was done. There was no going back. The people who had once respected her were now questioning everything, and her grip on the business and her reputation was slipping away. As for me, despite the sense of victory in revealing her schemes, I couldn't shake the emptiness I felt. Yes, I had exposed her lies, but at what cost? My daughter, the person I had trusted and loved the most, was now a stranger to me. I had lost her. I had exposed the truth, but in doing so, I had destroyed the very foundation of my family. My heart ached at the thought of it. Was it worth it? I spent long nights reflecting on everything that had happened. What was the point of all this success if it had led to the destruction of the one thing that truly mattered? The business, the money, all of it felt hollow now. I had spent so many years focused on building an empire, on ensuring that everything was perfect, that I had lost sight of the most important thing in life: human relationships. The moment I had revealed the truth, I thought I would feel a sense of satisfaction, of justice. But all I felt was a profound sense of loss. My family was shattered. My daughter, my flesh and blood, was now lost to me. And I couldn't undo it. I realized, too late, that the real wealth in life isn't measured in dollars or business deals. It's in the people you love, the trust you build with them, and the relationships that last. I had been blind to that for so long, caught up in the chase for success, and now it was too late to fix it. I had won the battle, but at what cost? The victory felt empty, because in the end, I had lost the most precious thing I had ever had: my family. I had been living in a world I didn't recognize for months, a world where everything I worked for seemed to be slipping through my fingers. I thought for so long that success, business, power, these things were what mattered. But in the end, I learned something much more important. What truly matters is not the empire you build, but the people you lose along the way. When I finally made the decision to leave, it felt like a weight was lifting off my chest. I had spent my entire life building this business, fighting to keep it afloat, and in the process, I had lost the most important thing of all: my family. I realized, at that moment, that it wasn't worth it anymore. I couldn't keep playing this game. I couldn't keep fighting for something that had already cost me everything. So, I did the only thing left to do: I walked away. I sold my shares, handed over the business to Yen and her husband, and walked away from the life I knew. I moved to a quiet place, away from the noise and the constant pressure. I needed peace. I needed to think, to reflect on everything that had happened. The quiet gave me the space to understand the magnitude of the damage, not just to my career, but to my family. I spent my days in solitude, reflecting on the choices I had made. I thought about my daughter, how we once had such a strong bond, how I had raised her with love and care, only for that to be shattered. I realized that I couldn't go back. The damage was done, and I had no idea how to fix it. There were no more chances left to rebuild what we once had. Meanwhile, Yen was left behind, alone in a way she had never experienced before. She had lost the support she had always counted on, from me, from the partners, and eventually even from her own husband. He couldn't stand by her, as she lost everything: her business, her reputation, and most of all, her dignity. Watching her unravel, I couldn't help but feel a deep sorrow, even for her. She had made her choices, but in the end, she too was a victim of the same game that I had been playing all along. But what could I do now? There was nothing left to fight for. No victory was sweet enough to make up for the pain we had caused each other. As much as it hurt, I had to let go. I had spent so much time trying to control everything, trying to fix the pieces of a broken family with my hands. But what I had failed to realize was that some things cannot be fixed, no matter how hard you try. In my solitude, I began to understand something important: revenge, no matter how justified it seems, brings only emptiness. The satisfaction I had expected to feel after revealing In's lies, after striking back, never came. Instead, I was left with the harsh reality that all of this pain, all of this destruction, could have been avoided if I had learned how to let go sooner. And so, I began the slow process of rebuilding my peace. Not my business, not my legacy, but my inner peace. I realized that I needed to stop fighting for things I couldn't control. I had to learn to accept what had happened and move on, no matter how difficult that was. I still think about my daughter, about what we lost, and about how things could have been different. But I have accepted the fact that some things, some relationships, can't be fixed, no matter how much we wish for them to be. I can only hope that Yen will one day understand that, like me, she has to let go of the past and find a way to move forward. In the end, the true lesson was clear: victory in revenge is hollow, and the only way to heal is to stop holding on to the pain. I don't know what the future holds, but I know now that peace, real peace, comes not from winning, but from learning how to let go.